Hi, this is Austin with Brush for Hire with another MiniWarGaming painting tutorial featuring the Grey Knight Dreadknight from Games Workshop.
So let's go ahead and start painting this base. We've got it primed now, and I've loaded up the airbrush with a 2-to-1 mix of Tausept Ochre to Calthan Brown. This is giving us a nice orangey brown color. If you would like for the rust in your finished product to be a little darker, you may want to reverse that mixture and have a 2-to-1 mix of Calthan Brown to Tausept Ochre. You may also want to experiment with other colors as you like. We would like a fairly even coat, but seeing as this is an undercoat, it's not going to give us any advantages if we spend a lot of time shading. Don't forget to hit the pipes underneath. So now we've loaded up some gloss varnish into the airbrush, and we're giving everything up top a really good coat. We want to seal in this color as our undercoat and not have any chance of scratching it off when we are doing some augmentations to the upper layers. So next we're going to use some non-aerosol hairspray. Suave is the brand that I'm using right now, but I'm sure there are many others that work. So we're loading it up into the airbrush, and we're going to pick a section. For right now, we're going to pick this bottom right section. We're going to give it a pretty good coat, focusing especially on the interior corner areas. We've also got some granulated salt that we are going to be using. We're going to drop this into the areas that we want to have sort of rusty paint chips happening. So a lot of the interior corners like those, anywhere that you think water might sit for an extended period of time. I'm going to move on to the next section. And the reason we're doing these in sections is because the hairspray tends to dry quickly, and you don't have enough time to really start working on getting the salt down into just the right area over an entire surface as large as this base in one shot. Next, we're going to get these pipes that are coming out of the front of the base. Very large section here. We're going to have to work quickly to make sure that it doesn't dry before we get this on. So if your spray starts to dry before you get everything on, you can always hit it with another coat to try and seal the salt down to the surface. In this case, we're just re-moistening the edge so that we can get some more weathering around the edges. And last, we've got this other set of pipes. Now, once the hairspray is completely dry, we're going to load up the airbrush with a 3-to-1 mix of Narlock Green to Skull White. And we're going to start painting over all these panels. Now this, we are going to take our time and shade as we go, because this is the top coat. This is our final actual spray coat on these. What we're doing is we're going to go over everything in the least rusted and corroded areas, and as we get closer to the heavily salted areas right in the corners, we're going to basically fade into that so that we leave a little more brown in those areas than we do normally. Now the end game here is that once we get this down and it's good and dry, we're going to take some warm water and a brush, and we're going to apply to the surface to dissolve the salt that's underneath this paint, taking the paint that's on top of it with it. The effect that this is going to achieve is chipping and pitting in all of these places that will reveal this brown rust color underneath. So we're going to add just a touch more white to it and go back over it to give some slightly lighter spots in the middles of these panels. This will give the effect of slightly more oxidized paint. So now, on top of these pipes coming out of the sides and front of the base, we're going to hit that with just a little bit of 1-to-1 Chaos Black to Skull White. We're not going to be particularly intent on getting an even coverage over the entire area. In fact, the parts that are very dark and back in those areas, we want to leave much darker than the forward protruding parts, just so that we get a sense of darkness as it recedes back into those areas. So now we're going to start applying some of that warm water. We're essentially just trying to dissolve all of the salt. This is going to take a little while, so you just have to be patient when you do this. I like to use a fairly stiff brush because it tends to knock off some of the salt that is really caked in. You can also use it in later steps to really start wearing the paint in certain areas. And because we laid down that very significant coat of gloss varnish to begin with over our undercoating, we now know that when we start working on this, the paint that is most likely to come up is that top coat and not our undercoat. And once you have sufficiently gotten the salt dissolved and off, you can dab it down with a paper towel and take a look at the finished product. So now on the rock portions here, we're going to be using some Kimmery Brown foundation paint and just going to dry brush over all of that. We're also going to apply it to the lip of the base, give it a more finished look. Alright, so now we've got some Ogren flesh that we're going to be applying to a lot of these tight little interior corner details and onto some of the rivets. This is really going to help accentuate some of the rust and decay that's happening with this metal. For the most part with this step, just use common sense and add it in places that you think will have a particularly large amount of water pooling in them. And when you have areas like this where water would be pooling most places, just pick a few random spots. So on the tiles, what I did here is just trace out a few places in between the tiles and the grout to help reinforce the fact that this is a textured area and water might flow and trickle in different little streams across this uneven surface. And now in this one larger pipe, I'd like to have it appear as though there's some sort of liquid or waste coming out of it. So we've mixed Badab Black and Thraka Green to make a blackish green, old oil looking mixture. And we're just pooling it in the bottom there. And we're going to have it come out and over the edge just a little bit to make it look like it was flowing at some point. Here's a look at the finished base.
This has been the 9th and final part of a painting tutorial on the Dreadknight. Thank you for watching, and happy wargaming.